once I was on the road, it was sort of, the whole thing was a learning experience, but one of the biggest things I learned was how to meet locals, and it wasn't something I really prepared, or I had some ideas, but I didn't even probably even say that phrase before I left. How am I going to get local? I was just, I'm going to go, I'm going to see all these great places. And as I went, I kind of learned all these tools and ways to meet locals, and that really was the best thing ever. The more I traveled, the less I wanted to maybe have a list of sites that I wanted to see, the more I just wanted to meet locals and see where that took me and what experiences I would do with them. I went for, it was supposed to be a year. I had quit my job in television and left in 2006, and I didn't get an apartment until 2010 again. But I kind of went for 13 or 15 months and then kind of came back, drifted around the US a little, so I was sort of still gone in a sense, and then left again, and then came back finally and got an apartment. And now I'm traveling here and there where I'll go away for a month and come back for a month. But I'm still in touch with all the people I met, and I think one of the things we talk about as far as finding local experiences to me is just all about the people. Making connections with people in other places is, what was the sort of life education that I had, and these relationships and friendships that still remain today, that I, see these people and they visit me, I go there, I know I have friends all over the world that I can see. So we have a half an hour, so I'm going to run through some ways of finding these local friends and experiences, and then we'll have some Q&A. Okay, so one of the first and best ways, and some of you might know some of these, to have local experiences depends on where you stay. Sort of that whole, a long time ago I used to get Rick Steves books, and that whole Europe through the back door, and finding local experiences and staying low to the ground and not staying, I always think of it as like up high in a Hilton that you can be in anywhere in the world, where you start to stay in more affordable places, whether it's a hostel or then even staying with locals. So the first few are basically staying with locals. Does anyone know Servas? Servas was like the original couch surfing. It actually happened after World War II, and it still exists. It's a very more formal version of couch surfing. You have to be interviewed, you have an annual membership. I actually looked into that before I went, because right when I went, I think couch surfing was fairly new and I wasn't sure about it. Couch surfing kind of scared me, as it does a lot of people. Now I think it's one of the best things I ever did. It was wonderful. But Servas is sort of the grandfather of all of those. So you can check that out. Couch surfing is no barrier to entry, very easy. It's all free. Do you all know, have most of you heard of couch surfing? Anyone not heard of couch surfing? Has anyone done it yet? Great. I knew about it for like the first year while I was gone, and I didn't do it. I also, just like we were saying, like a lot of you, we've been in the same shoes that you've been in, so many things, and then I learned, and now I preach about it. But at first I was like, I don't know if that's for me. Who am I staying with? And I'm alone, is that safe? So I kind of just put it away, put it out of my mind, knew it was there, and then finally I was in Spain, and it just occurred to me again. So I looked at the website, and I was reading profiles, and I thought, this is so cool. These people sound so interesting, and they're all different people. And just to break it down really quick, what I love about it is it's all up to you and it's up to them. It's all reciprocal. You don't have to stay with anyone, and they don't have to accept you. So some people just get on there and you can quickly just choose anyone, or you can really look, okay, let me see, what do they do for a living? How did they write their profile? What do all the reviews say about this person? So there's all these sort of layers. And if 50 people said they're great, they're trustworthy, they're funny, they cook well, whatever, or they have something in common. I'm a journalist, so I saw some were journalists, or this one was a chef and I write about food. Well, that's really cool. And you could also read about, what is the couch? Is it a couch, or is it actually a private room? I kind of prefer a private room. So I kind of looked for that. Maybe you had your own bathroom. So all those things, I took a day, kind of each location I would take a work day, and I would sit and figure out, where am I going next? Where am I staying? How am I getting there? That kind of thing. And kind of look at these profiles and write to a few, and it was very personal to me where I stayed, and the host, it's personal to them. If I seem like a freak, they won't accept me. So I have great reviews. It's been wonderful. And beyond that, I made friends. I did things with these people that I never would have done. They took me hiking to some remote place because they had a car. You know, I didn't have a car. They'd pick me up at the train station, and almost in every scenario, it felt like a friend of a friend I was meeting, because you already kind of knew them a little. And people say, oh, isn't it dangerous? The worst thing that happened to me on couch surfing was I didn't really connect with someone, and there was like one person. Almost everyone I stayed with, which was quite a few, I'm still friends with, and I've seen again, because you just become friends. I mean, that's the point of it. Really, the goal of it is sort of a cultural exchange. The secondary fact is it's free. So you can be in London, where I was for a month, and it's not that expensive because your lodging is completely free. But you can, maybe you cook them dinner, you take them out, it's up to you. Nothing's accepted, and it's not reciprocal. They don't expect you to then go home and open your house. I did, because I really wanted to. But I can go on and on about it. And it's just like Airbnb, as anyone knows Airbnb. So very similar, except Airbnb does cost money. So the host can make a little money. I'm also on there now. My apartment in Chicago is being rented out right now on Airbnb. You can have someone in your home, or you can also rent it out when you're completely gone, which is what I do now when I travel. But I've also stayed with people on Airbnb. I stayed with a family in Portugal. This group right here, I should say, is in Nantes, France. And I was doing Airbnb, staying with Michaela right there. And their friend was having a birthday party. And it was just someone's house party, and it was just another great experience. They were fun. It was just like being at any one of my friends' parties back at home, and we're still in touch. And it is also thanks to Facebook, where remain in touch with some of these people and more in their day-to-day lives. And it was just a great experience, and I just felt I wasn't alone. It was super fun, and most of my experiences were like that. So once I started doing that, it was one of the best things. And one thing I should say is when I first started doing it, I just met people for dinner. So you don't even have to sleep somewhere. You can say, hey, I'm in town. Do you want to meet for coffee? I did it in Valencia. And I met a local. And that's when I was like, oh, this is such a great thing, because she told me where she hangs out. I wasn't alone. I had lunch with someone. It was just a great feeling. So Airbnb is another one, and homestay.com is another one. And then underneath that are some other ways to meet people, get local, woofing, so working on an organic farm, and you would stay on the farm, you meet other travelers, you meet locals, you're working, and you're all doing something together. So also bonding over something is a great way to connect with people. Stayed at kibbutz in Israel. I did that. I actually did it through couch surfing. I didn't know I was going to do that. And when I was looking for my next place to stay, the person on there lived on a kibbutz. I said, oh, great. And so then I got to experience that and learn about what that's all about. And then other things, like even if you do an apartment rental, kind of like Airbnb, or there's a lot of other companies in Europe, GoWithO.com is a big one. Roomarama is another. At least then you're maybe not staying with a family or someone, but you're in a local neighborhood, which I think is another huge thing. You're not always, sometimes it's convenient to stay in the center, but I really think it's pretty cool when you're kind of not, and you're in a neighborhood, and you can go to the center, but then you have this other slice of life where you go home just like everybody else does to the neighborhood and the more real life of a place, which is what I like to do. Also, you guys were talking about house sitting. So house carers and trusted house sitters. Trusted house sitters is based in England. House carers, do you know where they're based? It's Australian. So those are also nice, because then you're still in a local place. You might have responsibilities and a pet or livestock or whatever that some people have, but it's a neat way to also just discover a slice of life and get local in a place. So another thing which is wonderful if you don't really feel like sleeping, at someone's house or whatever, which I still do recommend at least trying it. And one thing I will say is I didn't do couch surfing straight. I would do it, then I'd be like, I love being alone too. So I was like, oh, I need my space. So then I would stay in a hostel, maybe in a single room in a hostel, which is almost always available. There's single rooms in hostels, which I started to like to do because I had the environment of meeting people, but I could have my own space. Another way to do it is to meet people for food. I love food. So there's all these websites now, and even through Couchsurfing or through different online sites are people meeting up just for meals. Mealsharing.com, it's actually based in Chicago, and it's people opening their homes up, so their kitchen, just like Eat With, and you go to someone's house and they're having tonight we're going to have a Thai dinner, or we're having a potluck or whatever. And it's just exactly that. You shouldn't feel uncomfortable because it's people also just like you who want to meet other people, which is sort of this thing with couch surfing. It's not crazy because the host also is crazy because they're opening their house up and want to meet interesting travelers or people from other places. So these meal sharing, eat with, eat feastly, and with locals is sort of a new one I just came across. It's mostly in Asia, so it's kind of interesting. So that's always great. I was in Milan and had nothing to do for Christmas and went on couch surfing, and someone was saying, hey, we're here, and any travelers around, we're having a Christmas Eve dinner, and it was wonderful. It just makes you feel good. And so I never really worried about being homesick on holidays or things like that. Another way to get local is to do something. So take a tour. A lot of times I was traveling alone, but in certain countries like Vietnam, I did a 2-week bicycle trip, and that's with these girls. And this was like my family for 2 weeks. We were cycling, we were bonding over this amazing thing we were doing, cycling from Hanoi to Saigon, and you just make great friendships. They're not necessarily, these are not locals, clearly. They're actually almost all from Australia, but it's just a great way to also meet people when you're traveling. Bike tours, food tours. In most large cities, I would come in and do a bicycle tour of the city. I love doing that. It gives you a great overview. You're not on a bus, you're on a bike, so you can get into some other places that you wouldn't necessarily be. And then you almost always bond with some other travelers, and then, oh, what are you doing later? Let's go to lunch after the bike tour. And then, oh, what are you doing tomorrow? Let's do this. So there's always this more openness, and also I think you'll find that with other travelers. Everyone's in the same boat. So it's not that big a deal to say, do you want to get a beer later? Maybe sometimes at home it's like, wait, are they asking me on a date or something weird? Whereas there it's just completely normal and casual. Take a class, you take a salsa dancing class, language classes, all these things kind of to immerse you more in the culture and just put you in front of people that you wouldn't necessarily meet. Long-term tours, like a 2-week bike tour, different things like that to kind of break up your trip. I like being alone for a few days and then doing something where I'd meet people. Before I left, a friend of mine who went solo, said, you'll never go 3 days without meeting someone. And that stuck with me, and it was totally true. And it's sort of up to you, and sometimes I liked being alone, but something would happen where I'd either put myself in a situation and then I was not alone for 2 weeks or whatever. So there's definite ways. And I do have to say, it is that tricky walking that fine line of disconnecting with your electronics, but a wonderful thing was the internet, where I could first find people and then go meet them face to face. So it's a wonderful tool to find these groups and websites, but then actually go do it. Another way to get local, which I actually did a few times, is to work while you're traveling. I also didn't really know I was going to. I just sort of fell into it. In Australia, I said, well, I speak that language, sort of, so maybe I'll get a job. And I found a job making coffee and sandwiches in Melbourne at this little shop on Brunswick Street in a really cute neighborhood in Melbourne. And I was an illegal immigrant, and I didn't have a work visa, and they gave me a chance, and I was probably leaving when my tourist visa ran out. But it was great. I was a local. I rode my bike to work every day. I was the only American working there. I was this weird novelty girl. And it was wonderful. And my coworkers are great, and I got to meet and bond with real people that live there, which is wonderful. Volunteering also. Blogging, you can meet locals, but also it's just a way that people will find your blog and be like, oh, you're coming to, I was on my way to Spain and someone found it, said, you're coming here, what are you doing for Thanksgiving? You can come over. And I said, if you ask me, I will. And I did. I had Thanksgiving dinner and with a bunch of expats that were living there, and we're still friends to this day. So if you're into, blogging, you meet a lot of people online, like they were saying earlier, through social media. I met a lot of people from friends of friends. One of the best things I did before I left is I put a shout out to everyone I knew, colleagues, friends, family, big email list. And here's where I think I'm going. If you know anyone anywhere, let me know. And I totally charted it out, and I wrote it all down. And I pretty much contacted everyone that had given me someone's name. The head engineer at my TV station in Chicago said, my cousins live in Dubai. I said, okay, what are their names? That's his cousins they had us over for a big Italian dinner. They had their neighbors over. They were so wonderful. They were from Pakistan and they were living in Dubai, and they were great people, and this is their house and their dog. And just wonderful. It just makes the whole thing. It just gives you this warm feeling in general, of course, that there's good people everywhere. So ask everyone you know on social media and friends and family. It's always really nice. So, questions about getting local or local experiences?
So the producers team obviously plan. How do you plan out your trip and still leave enough space to allow for spontaneity?
That's a really good question. For me, I mostly just planned geography. I kind of planned it around geography, and the longer I traveled, the more I definitely did space things out. The first maybe 2 months I had, I'm going to do, I went to Costa Rica and I lived with a family, also getting local, and I did Spanish classes. And then, because I had bought my first maybe quarter of the whole plane ticket, so I had these sort of dates. And that was moving fast. And then I knew sort of toward the end of that, no, this is too fast. I'm already burning out. I don't want to burn out. I want to slow down. It kind of leads to that next thing of slow travel is also one of the best things, in my opinion, you can do, where you're not speeding through and checking off places. So then I stayed in Australia for 3 months. I was like, I'm going to regroup there, get this job, and just to sort of slow it down. And so I always had a plan of maybe where I'm probably headed, because I sort of was going around the world, and what countries were important to me that I wanted to see. Something else, don't get too caught up in where everyone says you can go, but go where you're touched. Like, for example, I was in Costa Rica, and then I went to Ecuador, and then I went to Patagonia. I skipped Peru. Machu Picchu, never been. And I'm sure it's wonderful, but I really wanted to go to the Galapagos, and I really wanted to go to Patagonia, so that's what I did. And so I definitely can say, and then I kind of made this goal that even if it's a small place, I was never going to stay anywhere less than 3 nights. Because a few times it was like quickly, the packing and unpacking really got to me, just mentally, even though I didn't have much stuff. I knew my suitcase would close. I just hated the thought of will it every time and if I bought something, I had to throw something out. Something comes in, something goes out was another motto. The games I played with myself basically everywhere. But yeah, slowing it down and just sort of having a general plan, but definitely leaving it open, because if someone says, let's go here, and also, once you get to certain places where you don't need perhaps an onward ticket, I never had a return home ticket, which is another great thing I did. So I didn't feel this pressure of an end date, and even trying to not feel that in a smaller terms in each country. Especially once I got to Europe, it's easy to buy cheap tickets. In Asia, AirAsia, very easy to buy cheap one-way tickets. It was also very nice to just be thinking one way and not returning. So keeping it as loose as possible.
You said you got a job under the table. How does that go? Because I'm a rule follower, so I wouldn't know how to broach. Hey, can you throw a job my way?
And I'm no authority or expert on this, but I will say it seems it's pretty common. A lot of places, especially like I was teaching English, but I was in Turkey, and I also, like Rainer said, I didn't, or was it Rainer or Rolf? I didn't have my certificate. I actually volunteered in Chicago at Literacy Chicago, and I did teach English as a second language, but I didn't have a CELTA or a Delta or whatever. So I ended up teaching private lessons of conversational English in Istanbul that I just sort of through word of mouth, through people, so that wasn't technically legal. And the Australia thing, they're used to sort of summer help, and it was a place that sort of just, I went up and down the street all day long, and I'm super lucky. I got a job by the end of the day. That's really incredible. And I was more nervous trying to get a job making coffee, which I'd never done before, than being a TV producer, which I knew how to do. And they're like, well, do you know how to make a cappuccino? I'm like, no, but I've won an Emmy, and does that matter? But it was like, I'm a professional, I know what I'm doing. You know, I was the oldest person working at this coffee house, and so it's just sort of one of those things, you just sort of talk to people, I think is the biggest thing. Once you're there, all these jobs and things I found were once I was there. Turkey, Australia, it was just by talking to people, and none of them were big official jobs. Then I would have to like, and especially I'm also a freelancer, so anything I was doing that was sort of freelance work, writing or online, was okay because I'm still an American. It was, you know, for things I was doing as my home base is still here. Yes?
This came out also during Rawls' presentation, but I noticed like you did the biking trip and so on, but you're also only carrying a small. How do you acquire and get rid of gear for special activities like big hikes or bike trips?
Yeah, that one is the one is a really easy answer. The bike trip that I did, I was super lucky because it was with Intrepid Travel, which some of you might know. Intrepid or G Adventures, they're pretty low to the ground, pretty good tour operators. And there we had a bus. So if I didn't feel like riding up the mountain pass, which I didn't make it the whole way, the 2-hour bike uphill, I could get on the bus. And a truck was at the end where you could throw your bike on. So the bus had all our gear, like my regular pack for my whole trip. Otherwise, like for example, I suddenly did a trip in Egypt and we needed a sleeping bag. So also it became one of my chores. It was sort of an adventure. I was in Milan. I was like, well, I need to find an outdoor store. I need to, you know, I'm here for 3 weeks. So it was my adventure to, which is kind of cool in a way when you need to do something like a regular person needs to go buy a sleeping bag, but you don't usually do that in a foreign country. So I found these few outdoor stores, and where could I? And so, and then what did I do with it? I think I kept it with me, but some things I sent back home. Everywhere you go, unless you're really out there, you can always buy things. So I didn't travel. I sort of started by following the warm weather. So I went to the southern hemisphere first, did not bring a coat. When the time came and I'm like, oh, I'm still traveling and it's kind of chilly, I bought a coat at a street market. And then eventually I could sell it, get rid of it, keep it if I had room, wear it on the travel days because you can't necessarily pack it. But I think my biggest thing is so many things you can just get while you're out there. Don't bring everything you think you need for you. I always say bring what you need for a week or two. And then big odd items that you might need once, worry about it somewhere else because you can get it everywhere. Other questions? I think we have a few more minutes. Yep.
Did you, if you wanted to kind of like meet locals or find opportunities, did you go to like a cafe? I mean, or, I don't know, was there like can you give any tips about like a spot that just people seem to be friendly and open?
Yeah, that's a really good question too, and it's so like serendipitous. Like these things were ways that, you know, I knew I could meet people, but then like he was saying, when you're alone, you're open, and the smile thing is wonderful. It's so true, being open and friendly and smiley. And all I can say is I remember I was eating alone at a pub in London, and anytime I almost overheard English, I was kind of a dork, and I was like, hey, you know, like, as if it's so, you know, I heard an American accent, or even heard, I'm from New Jersey, so I'd hear like a Northeast accent, and I'd be like, are you from New Jersey? And I'm like this, you know, and then it was just fun. They were like, yeah. And so I was with some people, I was by myself in a pub and listening to this conversation, and they sounded like interesting people, so I wormed my way in, and then they were like, hey, hang out with us. And I can't say, and I'm not like a bar goer where I didn't go to a lot of bars by myself, or I'd be with people I met at the hostel and then we'd go and meet people. So sometimes it was easier to meet people that I was already with through my bike trip that day or whatever, and then we all go, and then you're more open and confident and you can talk to people. I ended up having another Christmas story, Christmas lunch in Sydney, Australia. I was alone. I was staying in a hostel. We all went to a bar the night before Christmas, and I thought, oh, my kind of dream is to have it in someone's house. Like, I don't know, some stranger is going to invite me, and that's exactly what happened. Like, I ended up at a gay couple's house for Christmas. They were at this bar the night before, and they were like, what are you doing tomorrow? And I was like, nothing. You know, the hostel's having something. Come over for oysters. I'm like, ooh. And I said, don't, again, if you threaten to invite me, I will show up at your door. And they said, no, we want you to come. And I came, and they had my name on like a place card. And it was just like their mom and a few people, and it was wonderful. So it's mostly being open. There wasn't an exact thing, but obviously it's out where people are hanging out. Now, that being said, I was once, my first time traveling solo in like 96 or something, I was in Austria and I thought, I want to go meet people, but I didn't know yet how to do it. And I went to a bar at night in Austria and I met no one and I felt so uncomfortable. But something's changed since then where that's not the situation for me, just to go to some loud bar and stand, like that doesn't work for me. It's usually a slightly quieter environment. And it could be a bar, like where you're sitting at a bar top or a cafe. It just kind of depends, who's around you. And sometimes I'd meet people. More than often, I meet someone sitting next to me.
I have one question.
Yeah.
You sort of touched on it at your first trip. How did you plan the first trip of going somewhere alone, like without it being manageable or not overwhelming?
The funny thing is, I love traveling alone now. I really do. I prefer it, which is such a neat thing, knowing from that first trip. And that first trip, I was with a friend, and we did 1.5 weeks together, and then we split up. He wanted to go somewhere I'd already been. I said, this is it. I'm going to go alone, and I hated it. Until I also learned about myself, I need transition time. And it's gotten shorter, but I still do. I'll be with people and then I'll go to the next place and I'm alone for a day and it's not as nice, the hostel's not as good, I feel icky. But that's it, like you said, it's not a vacation, it's real life. You're gonna feel lonely sometimes, you're gonna feel out of it, you're gonna feel whatever. And on that first trip, it just took me longer. I was alone in Austria, actually, where I went to that bar, and then I was in Prague, and I started to hit my groove in Prague, where I started to meet people, and I think I stayed at a hostel, and that's the first time I had done that, so I didn't even really know about like staying in a hostel and meeting people. Now I'm talking more about meeting locals and not meeting maybe other backpackers, which is great too, to commiserate and meet people. Everyone's great, but one of the nicest things about travel is meeting people, so you're learning from people that live there. I mean, that's how you really learn about a place.
I just want to make a quick comment about perspective. So, having done it as you have, what you have to realize, when you try to be social in New York, you blend. When you travel, with maybe the exception of Europe and certain other places, you're not going to blend. I mean, you are going to be a tourist. You're not going to be from there, and that takes a little bit of getting used to. By the way, that's a whole new situation where you're in a whole different environment. So you're going to have a lot of people approaching you. So I think in terms of how you meet people, it's like almost the opposite. How you keep them away. Right?
Yeah.
And you'll be noticed that you're not from there. It's always fun to, where are you from? I'm like, oh, no, you're not. That's a great way to start a conversation.
It is great. It is a weird feeling too, because you finally are not blending like you do here. And sometimes it's fun. When I was in Australia, it was fun, and other times I didn't like it. I dyed my hair dark in Eastern Europe because I didn't want to stand out. Or if I'm in Colombia and I have blue eyes, and I just, sometimes it was good and bad. Sometimes I felt like I stood out so much I didn't like it. Sometimes I liked it. It's a feeling you've probably never felt before. And again, out of that comfort zone, kind of learning new things about yourself and other people. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. Come see me if you have any questions. I'm here all day.